Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The alien woman thought she could easily kill the human warrior, but then realized she was wrong. The blade kissed his throat, humming with a low vibration that promised to slice through flesh and bone as if they were smoke. The alien woman leaned in, her long ears twitching slightly as though savoring the silence that stretched between them. She expected him to whimper, to plead, to sweat in the stink of his own fear. Instead, the human warrior just smiled broad, infuriating, with the kind of calm that didn't belong to prey. "You're awfully close," he said, voice steady. "If you wanted a kiss, you could have just asked." Her eyes narrowed. The nerve of him. A heartbeat more, and she would have carved that grin from his face. Yet her blade hovered, not cutting, as though some strange inertia kept her hand from finishing the act. "You think your little joke will save you?" she asked, her voice sharper than the weapon. "It bought me about 3 seconds, he replied. "That's longer than most people get when they've got a glowing butter knife at their neck." She almost laughed, almost. Instead, she pressed the blade closer until a faint shimmer of its heat tingled against his skin. He still didn't flinch. His eyes, brown like old soil, locked with hers, steady as if he had lived through this 100 times. Maybe he had. They stood in the ruins of a city that had fallen long before his ancestors crawled from the mud. Broken towers leaned against one another, strangled in metallic vines that pulsed faintly with long-dead power. Above them, the sky glowed a bruised violet, storm clouds grinding against one another with silent lightning. It was a fitting arena for a duel. Ancient, empty, forgotten. "Funny thing about humans," she said, tilting her head. "You break so easily. Bones like glass, flesh like fruit. Yet somehow, you never know when you're already dead." "Dead," he chuckled. "Lady, I've been dead since breakfast. This is just overtime." Her long ears twitched again, betraying her annoyance, or was it curiosity? She didn't answer. She pulled the blade back an inch, then swung. He ducked, the steel edge of his primitive sword scraping against her weapon in a burst of sparks that showered the stone beneath them. He grunted with effort as he shoved her back. "Not bad for a fruit, huh?" She moved with liquid speed, her motions honed by training that stretched back through centuries of her people's dominance. His swings were crude, heavy, predictable, but each time she thought she had him, his sword was there, deflecting with brute stubbornness. His muscles strained, sweat darkened his brow, and still that damned grin clung to his face. "You call that a sword?" she teased, flicking her weapon against his. "It looks like you pulled it out of a museum." "Yeah, well, it does the job," he said, blocking another strike. "You know, for stabbing people who point glowing sticks at my throat." "Plasma blade," she corrected with a sneer. "Glow stick butter knife," he countered, parrying so hard the vibration rattled his arm. Their duel spilled across the cracked floor, each strike echoing through the hollow ruins. She spun with grace, her long ears trailing like banners, her strikes precise arcs of light. He staggered, stumbled, recovered, laughing between swings as though this were a tavern brawl rather than a fight to the death. Once she disarmed him, her blade knocking his sword from his hand with a sizzling crack. The steel clattered across the floor. She lunged for the finishing blow, only to find herself flat on her back a moment later, the air knocked from her lungs. He had tackled her like a charging beast, more brute force than finesse, and now straddled her, grinning like a madman. "Still think humans break like glass?" he asked. Her ears flicked in irritation. With a sharp twist, she kicked him off and rose to her feet, her blade spinning back into position. "You fight like an animal," she spat. "And you fight like a dancer," he said, retrieving his sword. "Pretty moves, lots of spinning, not much substance." She growled, lunging again. Their blades clashed, sparks spilling like fireflies. The ruins trembled faintly, dust raining from the broken ceilings, as though the very bones of the city disapproved of their quarrel. As the fight dragged on, something unexpected crept into her chest. Not fear, not frustration, something stranger. Doubt. Every human she had faced before had died quickly, screaming or silent, but never laughing, never smiling, never meeting her blade with such relentless, reckless will. Between swings, he winked at her. "Tell you what, if you stop trying to kill me for 5 minutes, I'll buy you a drink. Well, if we can find a bar in this dump." Her blade hesitated, just a fraction too long. That hesitation unsettled her more than his smile. "You are infuriating," she hissed. "And you're adorable when you're angry." He shot back. She nearly missed his next strike, barely twisting aside as his steel grazed her armor. The heat of his nearness startled her more than the blade. For the first time, her certainty wavered. She wasn't fighting prey. She was fighting something else entirely. The clash echoed one last time, both staggering back, breathing hard. The ruins around them pulsed faintly, as if awakened by their fury. Lightning split the violet sky, thunder rolling like a drumbeat. He stood tall, battered, bleeding, yet smiling still. She tightened her grip on her blade, but her heart betrayed her with a rhythm she didn't recognize. This was not how the story was supposed to go. "Ready for round 2?" he asked, lifting his sword. And for the first time in her long, merciless life, she did not know if she was. Their blades clashed again, ringing against the hollow air like a broken bell. The alien woman pushed forward with the elegance of her kind, every move precise, every strike flowing like a pattern etched into her very bones. The human warrior, however, fought like a storm, messy, loud, unpredictable. Each time she thought she had unraveled his rhythm, he shifted it. Slipping away from the cage, she tried to weave around him. "You keep swinging like that," she said between strikes, "and you'll cut your own leg off." He ducked, barely missing her plasma blade. "It's worked so far. Look, still got both legs. Even the pretty ones." Her ears twitched at the ridiculous remark, though she refused to let her expression betray amusement. She lunged, her blade humming with lethal promise. He blocked with the flat of his sword, sparks bursting as steel met plasma. He laughed through the strain, as though he were sparring with a friend rather than dueling for survival. They darted through the ruins, their movements stirring ancient dust from stone that had not known war in centuries. A shattered wall gave way under their combined momentum, and they spilled into a vast chamber beneath. The ceiling arched high, filled with alien machinery suspended like the bones of a titan. Blue veins of dormant energy ran across the floor, glowing faintly at their presence. The human glanced around, his grin widening. "What is this? Your people's idea of interior decorating? Looks like somebody dropped a cathedral on top of a junkyard." "It's a control hub," she said sharply, spinning her blade in a warning arc. "Don't touch anything." He reached out toward a panel that glimmered faintly. "This one." Her ears flattened as she shouted. "Don't." He tapped it. The chamber roared awake, machinery groaning with the agony of long-forgotten purpose. Lights blazed along the walls, strange glyphs flickering as though half asleep. A shudder ran through the floor. "Oops," he said. "Guess I touched something." She launched at him, blade stopping an inch from his neck again. "You idiot. This system could bring the entire ruin down on us." He raised his free hand, smiling despite the danger. "On the bright side, if it collapses, you don't have to bother killing me." She almost snarled. Almost. Instead, she lowered the blade with a hiss of frustration. "You humans were not meant to walk among this technology." "Yet here I am," he said, casually dusting himself off. "Looking good while I do it, too." The machine stirred louder, the chamber shifting like a beast rolling in its sleep. Panels along the walls cracked open, releasing drones shaped like angular insects. Their optics flared red as they scanned the intruders. The woman swore under her breath. Security constructs. Ancient but still dangerous. He squinted. "Flying toaster bugs, got it." One of the drones darted forward, its weapons spitting beams of searing light. She spun, slicing it in half mid-air, its carcass clattering to the floor. He swung his sword wildly at another, missing the first strike, but managing to cleave it in two with the second. "You're supposed to aim first," she shouted. "Where's the fun in that?" he replied, narrowly ducking another blast. They fought side by side now, her graceful arcs cutting through the drones with practiced precision, his brute strength smashing apart those that strayed too close. Despite herself, she noticed how well they covered one another. her speed filling the gaps in his recklessness, his raw power shielding her when she faltered. When the last drone crashed to the floor in a shower of sparks, the chamber fell silent again except for their labored breathing. He leaned on his sword, sweat dripping down his brow. Well, that was a good workout. Do you guys charge admission for this gym, or is it free for trespassers? She turned to him, ears twitching, lips curling into something dangerously close to a smile. You're impossible, and yet alive, he said. The floor rumbled again, stronger this time. The blue veins of light running beneath the stone flared, and the entire chamber began to shift. Stairways unfolded from the walls, corridors realigned, doors grinding open into deeper darkness. He peered into the nearest passage. That looks inviting. Should we? Her blade hummed back to life in her hand. We'll have no choice. The system has locked us in. It will not release us until the labyrinth resets. Labyrinth, huh? He said with mock cheer. Great. Nothing says fun like being trapped underground with an alien death maze. She strode past him, blade raised, every line of her body tense. He followed, humming tunelessly under his breath. After a few steps, he said, If we survive this, you're still buying the first round of drinks. Her ears flicked in irritation. If we survive this, I may just kill you myself. Fair, he said, smiling as he fell into step beside her. Together, they vanished into the shifting dark, the hum of alien machinery echoing around them like a living heartbeat. The corridor shifted behind them with a grinding shriek of metal on stone, sealing itself like the closing of a giant's jaw. The human turned, tapping the wall with the flat of his hand. Well, that's comforting. Nothing says welcome like being locked in by a place that hates you. The alien woman ignored him, her long ears flicking forward as she scanned the faint glow of glyphs pulsing along the walls. This labyrinth was built to test intruders. Every passage is alive, every choice recorded. If we fail the sequence, it will bury us where we stand. Neat, he said, tightening the grip on his sword. So basically, we're mice in a box, except the cheese is death. You speak too much, she muttered. You swing glowing knives at my throat. I talk too much. That's balance. They moved forward, the floor shifting beneath their boots. The walls pulsed like veins carrying electric blood, faintly illuminating their path. At intervals, the labyrinth hissed and released steam, as if it were sighing in irritation at their progress. When they reached the first chamber, the floor lit in a grid of squares. She stopped him with an arm across his chest. This is a pattern trial. Step wrong, and the system will incinerate you. He peered at the glowing tiles. Looks like hopscotch. Hop what? A game, he said, stepping forward. Kids play it. Like this. Before she could stop him, he hopped onto the first square. Nothing happened. He grinned back at her. See? Easy. The next tile lit red. The walls opened with a hiss, revealing barrels of plasma energy warming to fire. She shoved him aside and leapt forward, her blade flicking in a blur as she redirected the burst before it struck him. He coughed through the smoke. Okay, maybe not hopscotch. Idiot, she hissed, grabbing his arm and dragging him to the correct tile. Follow my steps. Do exactly as I do. They moved together across the grid, her precise calculations guiding them, his heavy boots barely keeping pace. Once, he nearly slipped, and she caught him by the wrist. He looked down at her hand gripping his, then up at her narrowed eyes. Wow, holding hands already. This relationship is moving fast. She let go with a shove that nearly knocked him off the path. Fall, and I'll let the labyrinth burn you. By the time they reached the other side, the plasma barrels hissed closed, and the floor dimmed again. He wiped soot from his cheek and gave her a grin. That was fun. Want to do it again? Her ears twitched in exasperation. You are insufferable. They pressed onward, the labyrinth folding around them like a living puzzle. At one turn, the ceiling lowered suddenly, spikes jetting down. She darted beneath with fluid grace, while he slid on his knees, laughing breathlessly as a spike grazed his shoulder. Too close, she warned. Close is still alive, he said. Later, they entered a chamber filled with floating platforms, suspended over a chasm that yawned into darkness. She leapt gracefully from one to the next, her balance perfect. He followed clumsily, nearly falling with each jump. She glanced back to see him flailing on a narrow platform. Your kind has no grace. Grace is overrated, he said, hauling himself up. Surviving ugly is still surviving. He stumbled again, and this time she caught his wrist before he toppled into the void. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked, the hum of the labyrinth surrounding them. Then he smirked. Second time you've held my hand. People are going to talk. She shoved him forward onto the next platform. If you fall, I will not catch you again. Sure you won't, he said under his breath. When they reached the far side, the platforms crumbled into the chasm behind them, as though erasing their escape. She pressed a hand to the wall, reading the glyphs that flickered to life. It adapts. It is studying us. Studying me, he said. Good luck. I've been confusing people since birth. The wall opened to reveal a long passage lit by eerie blue light. The air was heavy with static, and faint whispers echoed, though no mouth spoke. He glanced around uneasily. Please tell me that's your people's version of elevator music. It is memory echo, she said. Fragments of those who failed before us. The whispers grew clearer, fragments of screams and pleas. He tightened his grip on his sword. Great. Haunted hallways. All we're missing is some creepy child rolling a ball. She didn't understand the reference, but quickened her pace. They moved together, step for step, through the hall of voices. When they emerged, the passage sealed shut behind them. They stood in a chamber glowing with a soft light, the center dominated by a pedestal. Resting on it was a sphere of shifting energy, its surface rippling like liquid metal. She drew in a sharp breath. A core fragment. It hasn't been active for centuries. He tilted his head. Looks like a shiny ball to me. Want me to poke it? Don't, she began, but his finger was already hovering. The sphere pulsed, light flaring so bright the chamber shook. Energy coursed through the walls, the labyrinth's heartbeat quickening. She turned on him, fury in her eyes. You reckless fool. He held up his hands, grinning sheepishly. Hey, I only touched it a little. The sphere floated into the air, rising above the pedestal, humming with power. The walls opened once more, revealing yet deeper paths ahead. She stared at it, unsettled. The labyrinth has accepted us into the next sequence. See, he said, resting his sword on his shoulder. Sometimes poking shiny things works out. Her ears flicked in disbelief. One day, your luck will run out. He gave her another grin. Maybe, but not today. Come on, partner. And with the labyrinth pulsing around them, they stepped into the unknown together. The walls vibrated as if the labyrinth itself were holding its breath. The energy sphere floated ahead, guiding them into a chamber far larger than any they had yet seen. The human let out a low whistle. Well, that's either the treasure room or the boss fight. The alien woman's ears angled forward. This place was built to guard, not to give. Whatever waits here will not welcome us. Good, he said, resting his sword on his shoulder. I was worried things were getting too cozy. The chamber came alive at their steps. Lights flared across the walls, glyphs racing like fire through the stone. A deep rumble rolled through the floor as the sphere settled into the center of a colossal machine embedded in the ground. Panels unfolded, gears screamed awake, and a towering figure rose from the depths, a construct of metal and light, its face blank save for two burning lenses. The human squinted up at it. Huh, big, shiny, and angry. Definitely the boss fight. The Guardian's voice boomed in a language older than both of them, vibrating the air with every syllable. The woman understood enough to pale. It has marked us as intruders. It will purge us. The human lifted his sword. Well, at least it didn't say please. The Guardian struck, a massive arm swinging down. They dove in opposite directions as the impact cracked the floor. She darted forward, plasma blade slashing against its leg, leaving a glowing scar. He charged with a roar, slamming his sword into a joint. Sparks flew. but the construct barely staggered. "This thing's tougher than week-old ration bread," he shouted. "Stop talking and strike," she snapped, vaulting onto the Guardian's arm to slice through a cable. He grinned despite himself. "See, when you yell at me like that, it just feels like we're married already." The Guardian's chest opened, energy building inside. She leapt down, shoving him aside just as a beam of white-hot plasma tore across the chamber. The blast scorched the stone, missing them by a breath. He looked at the smoking line on the floor, then at her. "That would have ruined my day." "Stay alive," she hissed. "I'm trying. It keeps interrupting me." They pressed the attack together. She moved with blinding precision, each strike cutting deeper into the Guardian's systems. He fought with brute force, swinging wide arcs that rattled the machine's armor. It retaliated with devastating sweeps, beams, and stomps that shook the chamber. Yet in the chaos, their movements began to sync. At one point, she spun off the Guardian's shoulder, landing lightly beside him. He covered her retreat with a heavy swing, grinning. "Look at that. We're starting to dance." "Less dancing, more killing," she said, though her lips twitched as if suppressing a smile. The Guardian roared again, its voice shaking dust from the ceiling. It brought both arms down in a crushing blow. Together, they braced, crossed their weapons, and shoved upward with a combined force neither could muster alone. The impact sent cracks racing across the floor, but they held. He bared his teeth in a grin. "Not bad for glass bones and fruit flesh, huh?" Her ears flicked in irritation, but she didn't deny the truth. They pushed back, creating an opening. She surged forward, stabbing her blade deep into the Guardian's chest. He followed, driving his steel into the crack she'd made. Energy screamed through the construct as light burst from its seams. It staggered, limbs flailing, then collapsed with a thunderous crash that rattled the chamber. The silence afterward rang louder than the fight itself. They stood side by side, weapons lowered, chests heaving. The Guardian's remains sparked faintly, smoke curling into the air. He leaned on his sword, grinning through the exhaustion. "Well, that was easy." She shot him a look so sharp it could have been another blade. "You nearly died 6 times." "Yeah, but nearly doesn't count," he said, winking. Her ears twitched. For the briefest moment, she let out something dangerously close to a laugh. "You are insufferable. And you're finally laughing," he said, triumphant. The floor pulsed beneath them, the labyrinth acknowledging the Guardian's defeat. Pathways opened in every direction, but one glowed brighter, beckoning them forward. She studied it warily. "The system has accepted us. We are being led deeper." He sheathed his sword, rolling his shoulders. "Lead the way, partner. Just don't expect me to stop making jokes." "Then I will expect the labyrinth to finish you instead," she muttered, but there was no real venom in her tone. Together, battered yet alive, they stepped onto the path, the glow rising around them as the labyrinth prepared its final trial. The new passage rose before them like a challenge, glowing with a steady light that pulsed in rhythm with their steps. The human glanced sideways at the alien woman, her blade still humming softly at her side. "So this is it. Final level. Should we expect another angry tin can, or maybe a quiz show about alien history?" Her ears twitched. "This is the heart. The labyrinth will not fight us with machines now. It will test something else." He lifted a brow. "Like my patience, because you've already been doing that since we met." She almost smirked, almost. But the chamber they entered silenced both of them. At its center floated a structure of light and metal, shaped like a crown suspended in the air. Streams of energy radiated from it, spreading through the labyrinth, like veins. She stepped forward, her voice quieter. "This is the nexus, the core of everything. My people built it to guard knowledge, and to judge those who seek it." The human scratched his jaw. "So it's like a really picky librarian." The nexus flared at their approach. Symbols spiraled into the air, voices whispering in a dozen tongues before converging into one. "Prove your worth or be erased." He sighed. "Told you. Librarians." The chamber shifted, and suddenly, visions surrounded them. For her, the battlefield where she had once claimed victory after victory, the cries of conquered species echoing around her. For him, the ruins of his own cities, fires burning, faces he had failed to protect. The Nexus thrust their past before them, daring them to bend under the weight. She stiffened, clutching her blade. It shows us what we most fear. He watched the flames licking at the phantom ruins. Good news, then. I've already lived through mine. The visions pressed harder, demanding despair. She staggered, ears trembling as she whispered, "So many victories, yet none bring peace. Was it all emptiness?" He put a hand on her shoulder, steady despite the firestorm around them. Maybe it wasn't about winning or losing. Maybe it's about who stands with you when the smoke clears. Her eyes met his, her doubts laid bare. "You are not afraid." "Terrified," he admitted with a grin. "But fear's just proof you're still alive." The Nexus pulsed, as if measuring his words. The visions flickered, wavering under their defiance. She lifted her blade again, but this time not in violence. She plunged it into the ground. The hum silenced. "I am tired of conquest. I am tired of certainty. If this is judgment, then let it see me as I am, uncertain, but no longer blind." He laughed softly. "Finally, I was starting to think you'd never admit you liked me." Her ears twitched sharply. "I said nothing of the sort." The Nexus glowed brighter, voices rising, then settling into a single phrase, "worthy." The chamber shuddered, then stilled. The crown of light lowered, its energy dispersing until the labyrinth itself fell quiet, as if finally at rest. The passage opened, not with menace this time, but with a quiet invitation. He stretched, rolling his sore shoulders. "So, we beat the maze, we didn't die, and we didn't kill each other. That's a win in my book." She regarded him for a long moment, her face unreadable. At last, her ears softened, and she said, "Perhaps humans are not as fragile as I believed." He grinned. "Careful, that almost sounded like a compliment." She turned away, striding toward the exit. "Do not let it go to your head." He followed, sword slung casually over his shoulder. Too late. They emerged into the open air, the ruins stretching behind them, the sky clearing as if the labyrinth's end had lifted the weight from the land itself. For the first time since their meeting, silence hung between them, not sharp with tension but strangely comfortable. He broke it, of course. "So, drink after this?" She stopped, long ears twitching. "You are insufferable." He smiled. "Yeah, but admit it, you'd miss me if I was gone." She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. Together, they walked forward, two warriors once bound by blade and pride, now bound by something far stranger. Not conquest, not prey and predator, but an unexpected fate neither had sought, yet both accepted. And for the first time, she found herself smiling, though she would never let him see it. The end.